Hey everybody, this is Xehanort Kamikaze. I'm on my Sorcerer, and we're going to be going over the Corruption spec. I have a couple things to note as far as the Discipline path, which will be going hand in hand with quite a bit for the rotation itself, and which the rotation goes from person to person. However, this one I actually got from a good friend of mine who mains a healing sorcerer. Same thing with the utility points I got from him. So I will not be going over any substitutions from the utility points, but I still recommend that you read over all of them in case you want to make some changes for your own playstyle. And of course, I'll be going over the important things as far as the healing. And at the end of the video, I will be going over some player tips for you guys. If you've seen any of my other videos, I go over the same recommendations and the same tips for the tips at the end of each video. So, under utility points, I have Sith Defiance, which increases damage reduction by 3%. I also have Empty Body, which increases all healing received by 5%. However, it does not affect Stolen Life. Under Masterful, I have Suppression, which activating Con Mind grants Suppression, which increases damage reduction by 25% for 6 seconds. I also have Corrupted Flesh, which reduces the damage taken from all periodic effects by 15%. Dark Resilience, which reduces the damage taken by the target of your extrication by 25% for 6 seconds after you extricate them. Additionally, increases the healing done by your unnatural preservation by 30%. And then I have Lightning Barrier, which only affects you and not your allies, where when you take damage or when you absorb damage from your static barrier will shock the attackers for 5143 energy damage. And then under Heroic, I have Shapeless Spirit, which reduces all damage taken from both area effects and while you're stunned by 30% each. Under Legendary, I have Force Mobility, which Thundering Blast, Innervate, and Force Leech may be activated while moving. So for some important things, Static Barrier, you want to keep on the targets that seem to take damage the most, especially tanks, and usually the tank. You want to keep them bubbled as much as possible. Your Dark Infusion, as well as your Revivification, will both cause your Dark Heal to proc, which will have a glow around it. There is a cooldown timer on that. I just forgot what the cooldown timer was for the proc to activate between them. Resurgence and Innervate are actually a good combination. You want to start off with Resurgence, because what Resurgence will do on your Innervate is it will cause your Innervate to have a 25% chance to crit, which comes in very useful. Your Innervate, you want to use one or two times, usually 2, and which will cause your Revivification to be able to be an instant cast, because you'll have a stack of 3 for Force Surge, or Force Surge charges, which will cause the revivification to be an instant cast. Your Consuming Darkness, you want to use with a Force Surge charge whenever you can. That way it doesn't cost any of your force. However, if you are not able to use it with a Force Surge charge, you can still use it as an emergency use. It's just the downside to using it without a Force Surge charge is it reduces the regeneration of your force, which stacks up to 4 times. And if you use the Force Surge charge, it will take away one of those negative stacks. So to show you this, first I would be using Resurgence, followed by Innervate. I'll use Roaming Mend, Dark Confusion to cause the proc, Innervate again. Ooh, nothing. So I did mess up here. So you notice Force Surge is actually disappeared on me. Probably helps if I have my buffs up. There we go. So as you see, my Innervate did actually cause my revivification proc for that instant cast, which then Dark Heal. So another thing to note, make sure you have all of your buffs on you. Which includes Mark Power, Coordination, Hunter's Boon, and Unnatural Might. I'm able to have all 4 of them as I have one of every single class, and I do have one of every class, which they're all max level, and I've completed all the storylines on them, which allows me to have all the buffs with one use. If you do not have all 4 of them, it's especially important in ops to at least have somebody, or at least all the classes to use it, if not somebody who has all of the buffs. Will make it easier for your crit, your healing increase, bonus damage, blah blah. Endurance is increased, your crit strike chance, and then both your mastery and then the resistance to internal and elemental damage. All of them will be increased. This actually does come in handy even with healing, because yeah, it actually makes the proccing a lot easier. So generally, after buffing, you want to use Resurgence, followed by your Innervate, and then about 1 or 2 uses will proc your Revivification, which will also proc your Dark Heal. You'll be using Dark Confuse. You'll be using Roaming Mend as in between, along with Dark Confusion, which could potentially proc your Dark Heal if you haven't already used the proc from Revivification. Innervate is going to be your main use as you're healing, as you're able to use that while moving. Revivification will be constantly used to say if you're moving, and what is the name of that? I forgot the name. Splash points. Alright. So let's say you're in Eternity Vault and you're working on SWTOR, which is the last boss. You will be wanting to during the phase where you're essentially falling by the via staircase, just dropping between platform to platform down, you'll be wanting to use Innervate as you run, and then Revivification when everybody is grouped together, so everybody is able to get the heals as they're going through here. And it goes rather quickly, so you'll be using Innervate either on you or somebody who absolutely needs it. Rotting Mend is helpful, not during this stage, but it's helpful for when people are taking damage. They get healed. So you're dropping, then everybody's grouped up. You do a quick drop for your Revivification, Dark Heal on the person who needs it the most. And you're moving on again. That's just using an example for healing during that stage. And the main goal would be keeping Psychic Barrier on the tanks and other people who tend to take a lot of damage. For healing, and especially if you're on ops, force control is rather important. So the more combinations you have that would take the least amount of force, the easier the healing will become. Now for some tips for you guys, will be under Legacy, which is your Y button. Under Character Perks and Advancement, I recommend that you max out what you're going to be leveling up to the most. The more of them unlocked, the better. So let's say you want to level up through War Zones. Max out the War Zone experience. Flashpoints as well. There's also class missions, which class mission does go hand in hand with exploration. Under Travel, I recommend that you get the personal starship. The reason being is, let's say you're leveling up through your class storyline. I find it to be extremely helpful to have the personal starship icon in case, let's say we completed we finished the planet's heroic missions and you are in the middle of nowhere. Yet your class storyline is telling you to go to your personal starship to progress. Instead of having to run to the nearest flight point and take the speeder over to the spaceport, let's say it saves a lot of time if you just click on the personal starship and be ported directly to the starship. Same thing with side planets such as the Black Hole or CZ-198, where if you don't know where it is on the galactic map, or you keep forgetting on where it is, but you want to personally go to the planet to do the heroic missions, or to go in person, go to the flashpoints that are on those planets. You can just click on the transport and be ported directly to the planet. Under Convenience, I do recommend to eventually get all of them. However, the first two that I personally recommend you get would be the Field Repair Droid, which allows you to both repair and sell no matter where you're at, even in the middle of ops after a rough boss. I also recommend that you'll get the Field Respec, that way you're able to port just about any time, anywhere. You will not be able to use it in the middle of a war zone that's in progress. That's one example for when you're not going to be able to use it. You also won't be able to do it if you're in combat by any means. That would just be silly anyway. However, the Field Respec is extremely helpful in case, let's say, on our Sorc here, that we were in Lightning Spec, yet our healer decides to drop group from a flashpoint or from a pug operation group. you are able to go from that lightning spec to corruption spec and take up the role of healer to keep the group moving. Same thing if you're a Juggernaut and you're in DPS role, but you also have tank role or the tank gear on you in the tank drops group. You're able to go from the DPS spec to the tank role, switch out your armor, and help keep the group moving as you step up to tank. The rest of these are of course the mail droid, where you can drop it and be able to check your mail. There's a personal cargo hold and a personal legacy cargo hold, where you're able to drop those and have access to both of them, which anybody can use for their own personal, and be able to put stuff that you want to keep in each one from your inventory. Under Companion, I recommend that you get the Legacy of Altruism, which increases the amount of companion influence gained from companion gifts by 10% each stack. You would think 30% total, however it's 10% from, first one is 10% from the default, and then the next 10% is a 10% increase from that initial 10% increase. And then same thing on the third one. What goes hand in hand with altruism will be Legacy of Promptness, which I also recommend maxing out, as it reduces the time taken to give gifts to your companions by 20%. This is, again, each one. You would think 60% total like I normally do, but again, it's first one, it stacks up, but it's 20% increase from default, then 20% increase from that 20% reduction from the initial 20% reduction, and then same thing on the last one. What it does is it'll take that initial 3 seconds to give the gift to your companion, and will reduce it down to a total of 1.6, roughly 1.6 seconds to give the gift to your companion, which is actually a huge reduction if you have a large stack to give to your companions, and it saves a lot more time. Under Global Unlock and Other, I say this in all my videos, that I recommend that you have one character max out the light attunement, so that way you can gain the Unity ability. And what the Unity ability is, it can only be activated while your companion is out with you, but when you use the Unity ability, both you and your companion will take half the damage for 15 seconds. So 50% damage is reduced. Under Ship Unlocks, you see on my screen, I am on my personal starship. You do not have to have everything from your ship unlocks. Everything that's here is available at the fleet. However, if you are like me and you like to be in private, I do recommend that you get the Operations Training Dummy as well as the Warzone Training Dummy. I've actually said this in some of my other videos that I would recommend Repair Droid. However, I did just learn, I did check it out, that there's not a lot of purpose for the Reaper Droid that affects the Operations Training Dummy or even the Warzone Training Dummy. All it does is it changes the health on your training dummies, either increases it or decreases it. And then there is one mod that's sold from the Repair Droid that reduces its armor to essentially take more damage. So it really, the Reaper Droid is just helpful to sell items, or if you want to monitor the health bar. But so the only two I recommend is the training dummies themselves for both operations and war zones. Under convenience, I recommend you get the Legacy Fleet Pass, so that way your Fleet Pass ability has 0 cooldown. Same thing with Legacy Travel, for quick travel to have 0 cooldown. And if you do decide to get the Personal Starship ability, I do recommend maxing out the improved Priority Transport Personal Starship. So that way that ability has 0 cooldown as well. With all 3 of them having no cooldown, you're able to port around all day, and anybody you're grouped up with that does still have a cooldown, wish them luck on keeping up with you. I do recommend that you get the tactical markers in case you are leading the operation or flashpoint, and that way you're able to mark out where you want each role before the boss fight, and hopefully it will go a lot smoother. I do also recommend getting the improved mounting. That way you can mount while running. I do find this addicting, and I did fall in love with that because I do not like having to stop, mount, and then start moving again. Especially since I do tend to pull at quite often. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Welcome to a Sorc healer for Corruption Sorc, and I wish you guys the best of luck.